back here on this Friday with another live for you all. Like I said, we do this every single Friday. So if you guys want to get your questions answered, you want us to cover particular topics, please let us know. Let us know in the comments, engage with us. We're happy to answer your questions. Today's topic is going to be all about what triggers you and exactly how you respond to that, what that means, kind of how triggers are more reflective of what's going on with you as a person and maybe a lesson that you need to learn that you've been avoiding. I know Jared made a video on that this last week too. If you guys want to go check that out, it's on the channel. I'll make sure you guys got the link below. Yep. But without further ado, I'm Chase. Got my good friend here, Jared.
Hey guys, Jared Schoonmaker. Hope everyone's doing well. But yeah, triggers. That's a topic we can all we might call it different things. It is a trigger, but you might call it spazzing out. You might call it something else, but I mean it is a trigger. And the title of the video that I did was "What Triggers You Is There to Teach You." And right. Chase nailed it, because typically a trigger of any kind is almost a reflection of what is going on inside of you, but it's being mirrored out to somebody else. So it's basically, I kind of tell people, it's sort of like it's what you're perceiving in that situation that you're projecting out as. And so a good analogy is, you could put 10, 15, 20 people just in a room hanging out talking, and somebody just says something out loud. Maybe it's something funny, they're just being spontaneous and funny. And maybe one person is triggered. They did not find it funny. They did not think what that person said was funny, and now they're pissed. Well, that's a trigger. And we've all been there. I've talked to one of my first lieutenants throughout my life. We've all had triggers. We've all had people in our lives or situations or even things in our lives that we didn't like, but we didn't really know why. We didn't really know why I don't like this person. Yeah. And so the only way to get past your trigger is to learn from it, learn what it's teaching you, because it's always going to repeat itself. It might be a different face, but the same type of scenario is always going to repeat itself. And you might not understand, like, what is the lesson? And that's in the triggers. You have to kind of step back and learn, what is this lesson? What is this situation or this person teaching me about myself that maybe I'm not aware of? And so, right. Well, again, the title is "What Triggers You Is There to Teach You." And until you learn that lesson, until you step back and really understand what the lesson is, it's going to keep repeating, and you don't really advance in life and your what you want to call your highest consciousness and in your development of yourself until you pass that test. You don't go on to the next level, to the next test. I always kind of look at life as a video game. We all start at sucking, in this video game, and some people play the game better, some play it worse, but we all do have those people in our lives or those situations where, you just don't like the person, but you don't know why. And it's because they're reflecting back to you something inside of you that you're perceiving, right? And you're then projecting it back out.
That's interesting, because I've met people like that all throughout my life. I grew up in Utah, in northern Utah, where it was like a super Republican place. Every teacher I had, every counselor I had, everybody that I knew, that I respected, even at church and stuff like that, everybody was a Republican, and that's just kind of the ideology they had up there. And like basically, if you weren't conservative, then you were basically just like liberal trash, whatever. But then I remember moving to Vegas, and I lived in California and stuff for a while too, and everybody there is liberal and everybody there is Democratic. And so it was really interesting kind of getting both of those ideologies. Obviously, those are extreme examples. That's just kind of one thing. There's any number of things about people that can trigger you. I think obviously their ideologies can trigger you, whether they're religious or not, that can trigger you. all kinds of different things, like whatever they believe in and whatever they hold true and whatever their core values are can obviously trigger you as a person. I remember a coach that I had, actually, he said something along the lines of, your perception of me is a reflection of you.
Absolutely.
And so I know for a fact, like when you see people out there that maybe you're jealous of them, maybe they just got a new job, maybe they just got a new car, maybe they just got a new house, whatever it is, you look at that and you go like, well, God, I should have that. What the hell is going on in my life, right? Or maybe they've been working out for the last 5 years. You haven't seen him in 5 years, then all of a sudden you see him and he's jacked. You're like, oh my God. Like, then it just triggers you for that reason because you haven't been working out, right? And so I know that, just like you said in the video, like, what do you have to learn from that trigger? I think that's a really important question that you have to ask yourself, because it's controlling you. Like, that's the thing that you need to realize. You're not in control in that moment. You're triggered and you're reacting to it, and you're not in control. And
right.
That's something that you kind of need to reflect on. Like, why am I mad about that? Why is this triggering me? Why did this make me feel anything at all? And then kind of look at yourself. Okay, what's wrong with my life? What needs to change? Where do I need to go? Because obviously, if the guy who's super jacked that you haven't seen in 5 years, like if you start going to the gym and you start getting jacked, you're going to feel completely better about that. It doesn't matter anymore, right? And so I think that there is a lot to learn from the things that trigger us, and really understanding those things on a deeper level, and really asking ourselves, why do we feel that way in the first place anyway?
Yeah. I think in real time, one of the largest triggers right now is President Trump.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or former President Trump. And we'll use Biden, but let's just use Trump. Half the people love him, the other half hate him. Now, if you take out the political, he's a Republican, so he has conservative values, pull all that out. When you ask somebody, well, what is it about Trump that you absolutely hate? And you start listening to him. He's brash. He says what he wants to say. He doesn't care about other people's feelings. He's this and that. And if they really listen to it, that's the deficiency, or that's what they wish they were able to pull out of themselves more, to be a little more brash, to maybe be a little more bold and say the things they want to say. That's the trigger. They're seeing in him a deficiency in them that they wish they had. Now, I'm not saying that the trigger in itself is, I wish I was a dickhead. No, I wish I was a little more bolder. I wish I had the ability to decide I'm going to go run president and run his own game. So the trigger often is, it's always the deficiency, or there's something in you that this person's shining a spotlight on you and you don't like it, or your conscience doesn't like it. And so President Trump's an easy one to use, because if maybe you guys are watching this, you hate him. Think about why you hate him. It's easy to say he's a crook. They're all crooks. So that's not why you dislike the person. What is it specifically about him? And if you really think about it and you're honest with yourself, it's something in you that you wish you had more of, that he's reflecting back.
I think that comes down to like really anything. Maybe he's more charismatic than you are and you don't like that about him. Maybe he's more confident than you are. Maybe he's more courageous. I don't know exactly what the answer is. I don't know exactly what triggers you or why or how. I know it could be some of those things, but you have to ask yourself, like, what is it that you wish you had more of? Because obviously when it comes to Trump, as an extreme example, like he is somebody who just does what he wants. Like he doesn't hold himself to the higher standard that most other people do.
Right.
And so I think that in that effect, like if I hold myself to a higher standard, I'd obviously expect everybody else to hold themselves to that high standard too. If they don't, it's going to trigger me. It's going to piss me off, right? And that's just not the right way to think about things. You can hold yourself to a higher standard. That's cool, but you cannot hold everybody else to a higher standard. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you can even just take it down to the basics. A lot of people have a fear of public speaking. Well, that's a trigger. That's, you could be, in a room full of your own peers talking about, you're the expert in it. This subject matter better than anyone else in there, yet you have this fear to talk to people. If you think about it, that is a trigger. And the lesson in it would be, well, maybe you don't have as much self-confidence as you thought you did when you decided to
Right.
take the assignment. Maybe you're going to have what's called imposter syndrome, where you have this thought that I don't deserve to be up here to give my talent, to give my insight to these people. And the only way to fix that is, in all circumstances, is action. Figure out what it is, but action. Start talking in the mirror. Start talking to some friends and family in this situation to get more comfortable talking over your speech. And then that creates self-awareness. Like, I can do this. I can do this. It creates a little bit of momentum. Some confidence comes in. And then eventually you get into a room of 50, 100, 10,000 people. And the lesson is you are good enough. You do know the information. You're not so self-conscious. And so that's a big trigger a lot of people have, is just talking, talking in public. And more than 5 people tend to hush up. In a room of more than 5, people's voices get very soft. And a lot of it has to do that with that thought of they're just not self-confident. So that's a trigger. Any area of your life that is causing an emotion to come up that's heavy. There's heavy emotions and there's light emotions. Love is a light emotion. It feels good. You want it. Joy is a light emotion. Anger is a heavy emotion. So I always compare this to my clients, is when something's coming up that's very heavy, that, anger, rage, jealousy, those are all heavy. That's a trigger. Something is going on where you need to figure out, what is it? What am I angry about? What is that trigger? And what can I learn from it? Because that's the only way you can release the anger in that scenario. It's the only way you're going to be able to release it. It'll keep repeating itself.
You got to let it go. That's the biggest thing, is just letting it go. Like, just stop being so upset about it. And then the thing is the trigger becomes less and less powerful over time. The more that you actually dig into it, understand it more, you stop letting it control you, and you get in control, and you start just responding. You can't control what triggers you, but you can control how you respond. Right. And so that's one of the major parts of this, is like controlling how you respond. And really, that just comes down to thinking it through, just thinking deeper about it. Like, what exactly is the problem? Why am I feeling this way? Write it down, sit down and mull over it for a while, and then it will make the trigger less powerful over time. So that's the big thing, is understanding that really you got to control it. You just got to not respond, not react, but not respond. Yeah, don't react, respond, right? Because a reaction is going to be in the moment, it's going to be emotional, and it's just not going to leave anybody happy. It's just, you're not going to be happy with yourself after the fact either. I'm sure you've reacted to certain things in the past that you weren't happy how you reacted to it, and you wish you would react it differently. You wish you could replay it again. You replay it in your mind over and over and over again, and it's just one of those points of shame for you. It happens, and it does. And like, that's why it's important to sit down and reflect and respond and breathe and get in control and understand it on a deeper level. Because at that point, you're back in control, and now you can choose how you're going to approach it. And so I remember even like just thinking from the perspective of speaking on stage, right? I remember when I started doing lives about 1.5 years ago, I wouldn't say scared when I first started. It was just that I kind of overthought it. I kind of thought that I had to have an entire script in place before I went in. I thought that I had to have all of my talking points done before I went in, because I wasn't self-confident. And that's what that means. Like, when you have a certain amount of self-confidence, dude, you can handle this. You can go wing it. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter if this thing just gets sprung up on you. You can handle it. You're going to be okay. And so you don't worry about it anymore. And so I remember back about 1.5 years ago, when I started doing lives, when I started like actually getting in with a bunch of my entrepreneur friends, I started getting on their podcasts and their lives that they were hosting, all kinds of different things. And like I said, every single time it came up, I had to sit down and make a whole document of everything that I was going to cover, all the questions that I was going to ask, all the topics that we were going to have. We did that too when we first started doing these lives too. We were trying to maybe script it to a certain aspect just so we could stay on point. But over time, it just, we threw all that stuff out the window.
Yeah,
It just
like,
got to a point where like, hey, dude, we're just gonna have a conversation. We're just gonna
yeah,
wing it. That's where that self confidence comes in. Once you start to feel self confident about it, you're not going to care anymore. It's not going to matter anymore. It's not going to trigger you. You're not going to feel the anxiety and all that stuff anymore. And that's true of anything in your life. The more and more you decide to face it, the more deeper that you think about it, and the less strength you give the trigger, the more you can actually sit down, think, reflect, and respond. The more you're going to realize that, I got this. This is not a problem. This is not going to be a problem for me in the future. I can handle this.
yeah.
That's exactly what I experienced with these lives.
Yeah, same thing with me, with the lives, but also when I first started the Magnetic Men, just the weekly, or I'm sorry, the videos that we produce. I remember in the beginning, it wasn't so much. I guess my trigger was, all right, I'm going to suck at this because I'm not used to talking in front of a camera to people I don't know. So I kind of had that feeling like, oh man, what if my content sucks? What if people comment negatively about me, and all of these things. And then I came up with that conclusion. So what? I've been doing this long enough and I know myself enough. I mean, we're always learning ourselves, but I kind of learned all these triggers where if I just keep doing it, yeah, they're going to suck for a while, but that's okay because I'm still
Right.
getting my content, I'm still getting my messaging out, and I can get better. So I used it as I can get better. So I can only suck so long, I can only go up from there. It's sort of like I kind of correlate it to if you just start a business and you've had 0 clients and now you have 1, well, you're 100%, you're 100% better than what you were. So every video that we do now, I'm more comfortable. My ideas flow easier. I don't
Right.
have so much anxiety over it. And when I read the comments, again, I'm triggering people. Some women on some of my videos and even the beta males, oh, they're coming in to save the day. I just laugh. I'm like, cool, there's no reaction anymore. I'm like, oh, that's good. That's good. And then you have people like, I love your content. Keep it up. You're very underrated. And, I'm like, great, awesome. And so working through that trigger and then working with you and Kim and you got Nate, my video guy, and we're coming up with ideas and all this, it gets easier. So that action you had. And then you also said something earlier where you glanced over, you kind of said it really fast, but you said the word shame. And if you look at any of the bottoms of all the triggers that happen, because it's a perception of this, whatever the circumstances, whatever you're perceiving, you're projecting out. At the end of the day, it's shame.
Right.
There's something that I wish I was more like this person, and I'm pissed because he's that person I'm not. And at the end of the day, you can break it down to its baseline. In my opinion, it's just shame. And the only way you can cure shame is to pull it out of the darkness, look at it in the light, and then it goes away. This is why you need to self-reflect on, why does this person piss me off so much?
Right.
Why does his voice or her voice, or what is this person? It'll always repeat itself because you're still living in that shame. There's that shame about you that you don't want to look into those dark corners of your life. Once you pull that out, I'm like, okay, I get it now. I really do wish I was more bold like Trump, or I wish maybe your trigger is the dude, got inherited $30 million and you're pissed about that because he's a billionaire now. I don't know
Right.
what triggers you, but once you understand it, then it goes away. You've just released shame into the light. It can't come back. So the baseline for all triggers is shame. There's something in you that you're ashamed of.
Right. That makes perfect sense for
Yeah.
sure. That's the thing
Yeah.
too, is like, I think at a certain point after you get through this and you start to reflect on those things, you bring that stuff into the light. A lot of these books that I've read, especially the one with like what was it, Iron John. I read Iron John, and he talks a lot about that too. It's like you basically have to examine your wounds. You can't get better as a person. You can't become more confident. You can't develop that self-confidence and that charisma until you examine your wounds.
Mm.
And it's your wounds are not obvious. Like really, the only way that you can identify what those wounds are by identifying specifically what triggers you. You have to write it down every single time. Why am I triggered right now? Why am I feeling this way? I didn't choose to feel this way. I just started getting pissed off for no freaking reason.
Right.
I started feeling upset, sad, anxious, depressed, whatever it is, whatever feeling you have in you that you didn't choose. It's important to understand that. Write it down. That's how you start to understand exactly what those wounds are that need to be examined. And as you examine those things, and as you start to correct those things, and as you start to fix those things, and as you start to become the person that you really want to be at the end of the day, because that's the thing is all those wounds are keeping you from being the person that you want to be and living the life that you want to live. And so once you start to identify those things, and you get better at identifying those things, and you get better at uncovering those things and thinking through them and figuring out how to resolve them,
Yeah.
at that point you start to develop a certain amount of resilience. And the more resilience that you start to develop, the more you're just not gonna care what's going on. Like you're just not gonna give a shit. That's really what it comes down to. It's like it's really the subtle art of not giving a fuck, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. It's like you just got to stop caring so much about what other people think, what other people do, and just focus more on yourself. Focus more on what your life is, what you're doing every day, why you're pissed off at these other people, and start to just fix those things in yourself one thing at a time and really understand those things. And like I said, you'll develop that confidence, that resilience, that charisma. And that's exactly why we have this program here in the first place. That's exactly what we wanted to help men do, is develop that resilience and that confidence and that charisma and that discipline and stuff that we know is going to get them the life they want to live. Because that's all anybody really wants at the end of the day is ultimate freedom. They want to be able to choose what they want to do whenever they want to do it. They want to go into the dealership and buy the Maserati, they can go buy the Maserati. If they want to go and move to East Asia, they can go move to East Asia. It doesn't really matter. It's really just being able to do that stuff when you want to do that stuff and not being beholden to some government, some boss, something that's kind of holding you down, suppressing you, keeping you from being the person that you want to be. Because at the end of the day, it's just you.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about, so as you were talking, I kind of went backwards on this and I have an idea on it. So I'm going to pull out the people that, you see on TikTok, these screaming liberals and all this crap, because some of that is, yeah, you never know. Some of it I think is manufactured. But would you agree that often people that are offended, we call them the Karens or the Davids, there's always something that triggers them, always something that offends them, is actually part of what makes them in the Maslow, hierarchy of needs, the need for significance and the need for importance makes them feel significant.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah.
their triggers are also their way to feel important. And I find that interesting. I want your perspective on that because, yes, normal, I don't want to say normal, but healthy adults, we all have a trigger. And yes, we may lash out, but we may just keep it inside. Like, I don't know why I like this person. But there are some that get triggered and they have to scream. They have to put on this big show. And you wonder, they're not learning anything. Now they're doing a production. And do they inherently love their triggers so that they can feel a sense of importance, their own sense? And it is two different topics, but I do think that a lot when I see somebody who's always offended about the newest thing, the newest thing they're offended on. I think it gives them that sense of purpose in a way, their own sick sense of feeling important.
So I've seen this too. I've seen this a lot from a lot of other people, especially in. I'm not going to say it's one side of the aisle versus the other because it's definitely on both sides. Whatever you believe, like it doesn't matter even whether it's conservative, liberal, whatever, religious, non-religious, whatever it is. Like it's all over the place, and that's one thing that you got to understand with this stuff is the fact that like a lot of people will have a problem in themselves,
Yeah.
and then they'll get upset about something. And
Sure.
then they'll think that everybody else should feel that way too.
Right.
And a lot of the time, these are really polarizing topics. And like that's one thing you'll notice with the news and stuff too, and all the media. They play on this stuff. They live on this stuff. They thrive on this stuff. That's how they get their attention. That's how they get viewers. They want to trigger people. It's the same thing in marketing. I mean, I've been a marketer for the better part of like the last 10 years. And that's one big thing. You got to trigger people. You have to trigger people. You have to trigger them through whatever you're saying inside of your subjects, whatever you're saying inside of your topics, titles, all that stuff, thumbnails, whatever it is. Like you got to put things in there that are going to trigger them and make them want to click. And that's really like really clickbaity stuff is the stuff that polarizes people because they know for a fact that's what's going to bring people in, whether they believe it or not. Maybe they do believe it and they have this huge like conservatives are the devil or liberals are the devil. And so they go all one way and they just start saying so many things that trigger people. And that's how they build their audience. And they start to build up a whole bunch of other people just like them so that they can feel better about feeling that way. But they haven't really fixed anything, right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Yeah.
I mean, you could always go to some of these red pill forums where I would say a lot of it is showbiz type stuff where they're purposely putting on these bimbo women who are not, they're just smart. They're living in, they're 20 years old and you're kind of competing against a guy who's 35 who has life experience. You're on his forum. He's trying to trigger them for the audience. So it is marketing. You're right. And when you and I do our marketing, it's the same thing where people always first buy on emotion and then back into it with logic. It's still a trigger. Any emotion.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I just also think that that's also using those people that are always triggered or using that particular community. We'll use red pill because we're sort of kind of in that space. I don't consider myself like red, I'm more red pill, but anyway, our job or their job is to use people's triggers in order to get views, in order to get their audience up and then start dropping in things that they could buy. So now they're building trust within their viewership, trusting that he's going to say something that's going to piss off these 23-year-olds. It could be the same thing on the blue pill stuff, triggering stuff. But so triggering, like you said, in the marketing scheme and the business side, you have to trigger people.
Right.
I think it says you don't make money in the middle. It's either the right or the left. And the extreme sides is where people make their money. Very rarely you make money in the middle.
That's the thing, though, is like people are always split on one thing or the other. Like they're either fit or they're not fit. They're either Republican or they're Democratic. They're either liberal or they're conservative. They're either they're men or they're women. They're weak men or they're strong men. So it's like they're really just everybody's always split on one thing or the other based on their own experiences and their own ideology. And so that's the big thing to understand is a lot of people will hold fast to one thing so they can speak to that one side of the audience because that's how they make their money. Right. And here's the thing too, like I remember when I was first learning how to market, one of my big marketing coaches, like he told me, like, don't study for copywriting. He said, don't study books on copywriting. He's like, just forget all that stuff, throw all that stuff out the window. That's not going to teach you anything like that. Of course, the frameworks work. That's why they're there. But like, that's not going to teach you anything. He said, if you really want to learn how to influence people, study political speeches. Because those guys aren't even selling you anything. They're selling you an idea. And they're trying to get you on board and give them money and give them funding and all that stuff without giving you a thing in return. Like all they've done is promise you that they're going to work on this thing, promise you that this is what's going to happen once they take office and that kind of stuff too. Like if you study political speeches, they're really good at rallying people up. But what do? They get people emotional. That's completely what they do. They completely play on those emotions. They speak to a subject that they know is going to rile them up, that they know they're split on, that they know the other side is against, and they just hold fast to that one thing. Like, I'm going to take care of this one thing. I'm going to take care of whatever it is, this thing that you want taken care of, whoever they're talking to. If they're talking to poor people, usually they're inside of those disparaged communities. A lot of the Democrats and stuff will do that. They'll say, hey, we need to rise everybody up. We need to take the money from the rich and give it to the poor,
Right.
and that kind of stuff too. So they'll start talking about that stuff to rally them up. That's exactly what Bernie's whole strategy was when he was first in this stuff. Like he's like, we're going to take the money from the rich and we're going to give it to the poor people, and this is what we're going to do. It's just,
Yeah.
he got so much funding from people who were in that situation. So that's the biggest thing, is understanding that everybody's playing on your triggers. Whether it's politicians, whether it's religion, whether it's marketers, you're giving them the power to do that. And that's why you want to take control. You want to respond and not react, because when you're really reactive, like you see all those people that are so passionate. You saw all the people like after Hillary lost and Trump won, all the women that were out there, all the liberals that were out there trying to protest and all that stuff too, because their ideas weren't heard, and they were just so passionate about it. But you got to understand that, like, you don't want to be that person. I mean, yes, you do want to stand up for what you believe in, but you don't want to be out there with crowds of people doing what the crowd is doing. You want to go your own way. If that's where you want to be, then of course, be there, fight for what you believe in, whatever it is. But don't be triggered by it. Don't let it control you emotionally, because then you're always subject to those different things.
Yeah. I mean, the other part of that too is if people are trying to trigger you to make a viewpoint one way or the other, or to sell you a product or whatever, wouldn't it make sense to take this advice, read up more on it, but figure out if you are being triggered by something, figure out why, and ask yourself, well, why am I so mad about this particular thing? Because again, once you understand, you learn the lesson, you're not triggered anymore. And then that person or that company or that channel doesn't have power over you. You by default become educated. You've educated yourself on it. So it's hard sometimes, because there are situations that come up where it just something. There's one person. But those are the times where you want to start practicing this, when it's an isolated incident and not a whole political party or all this, because they're harder to defend against. They're harder to kind of understand, like, why don't I like Democrats? Why don't I like Republicans? But on the individual level, why is this person triggering me? Or why is this situation triggering me? And it always comes back to that base. You're perceiving something in that person or that situation that you're projecting out. And when you really look at it, there's shame involved in it. Otherwise it wouldn't trigger you. The very base emotion to the end, there's something that you don't like about yourself, that there's shame attached to it. You have to release it. And the only way to release that is to get it out in the light, look at it, and be like, oh, shit, that's what it was? And it's gone.
It's baggage, too. Like, that's the thing, too. It's like all this stuff is baggage that you're just carrying around. Like, the biggest thing, you don't want to keep carrying this stuff around your whole life. Like, it's heavy. And that's how you know, like, when you're triggered by something, when it feels heavy. Like, when it feels like when you're really passionate about it, something that just riles you up, right? And like, you're not feeling the way you were before. Like, you're feeling and you're fine, and maybe you're calm and you're mellow, and then all of a sudden, like, you're really upset, or you're really like even enthusiastic, happy, whatever, too. If something makes you feel strong emotions, it's important to understand what that thing is. If something makes you really happy, it's also important to understand that, so you can get more of it, so you can understand exactly what direction you need to go in. It's like a Geiger counter, man. Like, when you're actually walking through life, like, you have this little Geiger counter, and that's your emotions and how you feel. It's like, it's just feedback. Like, oh, there's radiation in that direction, I'm going to go over here, away from the radiation, right? So it's important to understand that that's your Geiger counter. Like, if you're going towards the radiation, you're going to get burnt. You're going to die. You're basically not going to live a fulfilling life. Your life is going to be cut short because you're dealing with all these heavy things. It's all baggage, and you just got to let it go. You got to steer away from the stuff that is radiation, right? You got to steer towards the life that you want to be living, and know what makes you happy, know what makes you feel content. Like if you're happy when you're fishing and just makes you feel really happy for no reason, if you're really happy when you're out there working out and you want to make it more of a lifestyle, you'd like to spend more of your time doing that and start training and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
It's important to understand these things, and that's why you got to write it down. That's why it's important to keep a journal and stuff every single day too, so you start to see these trends, you start to notice the patterns of these things that happen to you. And you notice the patterns that piss you off. You notice the patterns that make you feel anxious. You notice the patterns that make you feel inadequate. You notice the patterns that make you feel really happy and really enthusiastic about life. And once you start to recognize those patterns, that's your map.
Right.
Like all you got to do is follow that map through now and get rid of the baggage and stop letting it bother you. And you live a nice, happy, fruitful, light life where you're not feeling all these heavy feelings all the time. You're not triggered by all these things all the time, and all the things out there aren't controlling you anymore. If you want to buy something, you buy it. Like I said, marketers are out there waiting for you to do this. Like there's people out on the freaking freeway that are just ready to cut you off, piss you off, honk at you because they know that they're going to get a reaction out of you.
Yeah.
That's just what happens. And so you don't want that stuff to get that reaction, right? You want to respond and not react.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so we've been talking about triggers, which is the emotion, right? I want to take it one step backwards. In order to have an emotion or a trigger of anything, you have to first have a thought about that thing or that situation. So oftentimes that trigger, you have a thought about that person. We'll use an example. I'll use a baseline example because we do a lot of business coaching, you and I, and stuff. And the situation could be a person, place, or thing. But the example would be business is slow. Any situation is just the facts of whatever is going on. It's just the facts. Somebody died. My mom died. Okay, death. It's facts. It's neither good nor bad. Here's the difference. It's how you think about that situation. Your thought, I'm sad, my mom died. Of course, then you're going to have an emotion tied to that thought. You might have a thought, I'm so glad she's at peace. She's been suffering. You might have a little joy and feel that she's suffered long enough. Either way, the situation never changed. Death. We'll use that as an example because a lot of people correlate death with sadness. Sometimes it's not. So how you perceive that situation, death, we're going to call it. I'm so sad. Oh my God, she was everything to me. Somebody might perceive it. Maybe your sister or brother say she was 95 years old. She had cancer. She lived an amazing life. I have joy that she's at a better place. The situation never changes how you thought about it. You could call the trigger. It triggered this emotion. And then you have an action. The sad person's action, of course, is crying and, going through that process of grieving. The sister might go through the process of grieving, but more in she was an amazing woman, more of in a positive way. And then you always have a reaction. At the end of the day, when you have an action to something, there has to be a reaction. So in all of these situations and all these triggers in your life, the one thing you want to think about before the emotion, what am I thinking about? What is the thought that's driving this trigger, that's driving this emotion? And once you understand what the thought is, then you can change the emotion. It's how you're perceiving the situation.
Right.
So in this instance, we use death, but we'll just use business is slow. I get this from guys on Facebook. Hey, my business is slow. I'm just thinking about closing down. I just don't think this is for me. All right. So the situation in this one is business is slow. It's neither good nor bad. That's the reality. Business is slow. His thought about it is I'm not good enough. I've tried this. It's not working. His emotion to that is sadness, frustration. His action is thinking about closing down. Well, what would be the reaction? Well, the reaction is you don't have a business. So the only thing that
Right.
you can change on all of those is the thought. You can't change the situation. It's still slow. But my job is to shift their thought and say, business is slow, yeah, but you know what? I've been slacking a little bit. I need to do more marketing. I need to do some more things. It'll turn around. Change the thought. That thought's going to change a new emotion. You know what? I got this. It's slow, but I'm confident in my abilities. I've been in this position before. I'm going to ride it out. New action. I'm going to cold call twice as many people this week. I'm going to email blast twice as many people. Guess what would happen? The reaction to that is more sales.
So that's something that I've experienced a lot, especially being a business coach. I've noticed this a lot with the people that I coach.
Yeah.
Even since 2012, like I've dealt with, like 2011 actually, like I started dealing with these people, and I noticed that like all these guys, they would spend so much money on coaching. They'd spend so much money on all the courses and stuff that we were putting out there, all the programs that we put out. They'd buy into every single one of them,
Yeah.
but then they would never do anything.
Right.
Like they would never actually take action on it. They would never do anything with it. They kept buying our stuff. I'm like, how are you guys even making money to keep buying into this program? Or why are you even here? Like we even launched a new program earlier this year, and all the same people joined up, and they never show up for the coaching calls every single week. Like we have 4 people on that call, and there's like 100 people in the program. It's like, okay, well, what's going on here? Why do these guys not take action? What's going on? Because we can see it on the fulfillment on the back end too, that not much is coming through. And so it's really interesting too. And I've seen this a lot with like local businesses and stuff too, because I've done a lot of marketing for local businesses, and they pivot a lot. They'll completely pivot what they're doing rather than try and do it better. Like rather than actually thinking from the perspective of, if I just did what I do better, if I just doubled down on it, I would actually break through. But no, they go from this thing to this thing to this thing to this thing with the shiny object syndrome, thinking like, no, this is the wrong choice. I should have been doing this. No, that's the wrong choice. I should have been doing this. And then sometimes they'll come full circle right back to the thing they were on in the first place and be like, oh, I should have just tried harder on that thing. I really should have just got better at the marketing. I really should have just got better at fulfillment. I really should have just focused on better clients or a particular kind of clientele. I've seen this again and again and again because I've coached agency owners in marketing and stuff too, and they think that, oh, there's something wrong with my niche. My niche just isn't it isn't fruitful. It's not making any money. It's like, well, no, you got to get better at marketing first of all, but at the same time, you got to get better at finding out who exactly is the best customers in your niche, because every single niche sucks. Every single niche sucks for different reasons. It doesn't matter. Every single niche is great for different reasons, but switching over and over and over again is just going to keep you at the bottom. It's just going to make sure that you never actually make any money, that you always think that there's some kind of problem. And it's going to make you think that there's something wrong with you. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just not consistent enough. And that's the problem. And so there's all of that going on. But at the same time, like I've noticed too, like with like kids and stuff, like you take kids, for instance, like they don't really have hard beliefs. Like they don't really believe this, that, or the other thing. They don't come into this world as a Republican, as a Democrat, as a religious person, as a non-religious person. They don't actually come into the world that way. They get that impressed upon them as they grow up. It's impressed upon them from their teachers, their counselors, their parents, majorly, their siblings, things that happen with their siblings. I noticed this with my little sisters, actually. In 2019, I had a sister die of leukemia. And it rocked us. It rocked the whole family. Like my whole family, just like, it's not like it tore us apart or anything, but it brought us together in some ways. It made us reflect in other ways. But I remember my other little sister, they were so close together. They did everything together.
Yeah.
And she was devastated. And so what she did in response to that was she went to MIT. She actually got accepted into MIT. And she went there to fight cancer. She just basically put on her gear and she's like, you know what? I'm going to freaking kill cancer. This is not going to happen to anybody else. And just watching all the curriculums and stuff that she went through and seeing all the grades that she got and how technical it was. And like, I didn't even understand half the things that she was there for, but that she just was so passionate about it because that happened. And so, like I said, triggers aren't always a bad thing. Like
Right.
sometimes it really triggers you in a way that inspires you and inspires other people and inspires action on certain things that really go out there to change the world. And
Sure.
so that's the biggest thing, is understanding that none of them are really inherently bad, but it's important that you're in control and that you reflect on it the way that you need to, so that you make the choices that you need to for yourself, and they're not just emotional decisions.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, and I'm sorry about your sister's death, but that trigger did help your other sister kind of realize how finite life is, and how, she's going to use her gifts, her knowledge, her smarts to go to MIT and do everything she can to live for your sister,
Exactly.
and do that. And so if you use that steer method, it's the same thing. She could have wallowed in self-pity, went a whole different way, but her thought about it was, yes, she's gone, but I'm going to kick cancer's ass. Which created a new emotion for her, could be a combination of determination, focus, festivity, like I'm doing this, I'm tired of this. Her reaction, of course, was I'm going to MIT, and her action going to be, I'm going to be whatever that is, a chemist. I don't know what it is. So you're right. Triggers are, in one way, triggers are neither good or bad. It's a lesson that you need to learn. It can be bad if you don't learn the lesson and you keep getting triggered, because you're still held into that same cycle. But it's good in this exact same scenario where you learn your lesson and you then elevate out of that thing. So they're good and bad, and they're neither or. It's depending on how you perceive them. Just like anything, excuse me, just like anything in life, any situation, you name it, it's not a good or bad thing. It's how you perceive it.
Exactly.
And so, it does suck, because then sometimes people are like, oh, well, my whole, I was in a gang violence, and, my little brother died. Well, again, I feel bad for you, but it's the situation is neutral. It happened. It's the facts of what happened. It's how you think about that situation, which determines it all. So your triggers are always based on your emotion, but you can't have an emotion without a thought.
Exactly. Yes.
It has to come first. So that might be another way to help people that are going through a trigger. What was I thinking about first? What was the thought associated with this trigger? And then, can I change the thought? First, is the thought even true? A lot of thoughts that we have are not even true. Perfect example, I have lately started coaching more women than men on dating, and first thing I get is, all men suck. All men, dating is so hard. Well, that's the thought. And the first one, I was like, how true is that? Have you dated every man, all out of 7 billion people in the world, 3.5 billion, you dated them all? First, that's a problem if you have. But the answer, they start thinking, no, that's really not true. It's just the men I've met. Correct. That's their trigger, though. Their trigger, their emotion went to hatred or disgust or disdain for all men, based on a false thought. All men are scum. The red pill community is very good at this, saying all women are hypergamous, which they are, but hypergamy isn't a bad thing, but all women are this. Well, they're trying to trigger you. You should ask the question as soon as you hear that, how true is that? That all women will cheat on you. Perfect example. How true is that? Have you met all women and they all cheated on you? No. Well, then by default, you can change your thought. Say some women cheat. Absolutely. But do all? No. Change your thought. Again, you change your emotion, you change your action, you change your reaction. If you can get that, and if you can understand, basically it's called steer. You can even draw it out on a piece of paper and fill it all in. You can change the thought, which is going to change the trigger. and it's going to teach you about what it is about you that you're perceiving about somebody else or a situation that now you're projecting out. And that's very important to really be good at this, to understand it, because it does calm you. This is the whole channel is magnetic men. We don't want spastic, emotional, tampon filled women out here, men, women, beta males out here being triggered by everything. You're supposed to be calm. The situation comes in, reflect on it. Why am I mad about this? What is it about this situation that I'm mad about? If you can get to this level, this is another part of you leveling up. This is what we call being full stack. This is what we try to bring into different videos and ideas and courses that we're going to come out. It's not just about making money and having an awesome car and having a beautiful wife. All that shit is secondary. It's all about you first. And if you have watched this to the end, the triggers, the things that set off your emotional bandwidth, good or bad, you want to control those. Not ever saying don't have emotions, but don't vomit them out until you truly understand them.
Exactly. And that's the thing too, is just taking back the control of it all. Like really just kind of making sure that you respond. If you want to respond in a way that's critical, if you want to respond in a way that pisses you off, I mean, that's your choice at that point.
Yeah.
But at least you made the choice. At least you stopped, you reflected on it, you understood it more, and you came to that conclusion that, you know, this is the way I need to respond. This is the adequate response for this situation, and then respond that way. It's really just taking back control. Like, I'm not telling you exactly how you should feel, what you should think, whether you're right or whether you're wrong. I'm not here to tell you that. Right. That's up to you to decide. Like, I don't know. Maybe you feel you are. Maybe you feel really strongly about it. But the whole point is to reflect on it and understand it and then decide how you're going to respond and what you're going to do. Because like I said, then it's on you. Then it's your choice. At that point, you can't let all these marketers play on you. You can't let all these politicians play on your emotions, and they will try. Like I said, you're just kind of giving away control over yourself. You're saying that if this thing happens, I'm going to get super pissed off. If this thing happens or I'm in this situation, I'm going to be anxious the whole time. If this happens, I'm going to be really upset. I'm going to be really sad. And so it's just, you're not in control. You're just letting all this stuff control you, and you're really letting all these outside things, you're trying to control the outward world. And you can't control other people. You can't control other things. You can't control the government. You can't control politicians. You can't control your spouse. You can't control your kids to a certain aspect. There's a lot of things that you just don't control. And so you got to realize that the only thing I do control is how I respond to it all. And if I decide to remove myself from the situation entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. And even going one step further, I know we're getting to the hour here. Even if you're in a relationship or you want to be in a relationship and you get triggered easily and you don't learn your lessons, you don't figure out why this bothers you. I want my girlfriend's going out with her girls, and you hear in the red pill community, oh, you don't let her do that. That's blah, blah, blah. Well, if you're mad and she brings it up that, hey, I'm going to go out with the girls on Saturday night, and you get pissed, well, you just got triggered. Why? On a very real level, a lot of guys get mad, or they get not mad, maybe jealous. They might mask it with, I'm being protective, which you should be. Where are you going? I'm making sure you're safe. But it is a trigger. Are you mad at the fact that she's going to go out and potentially get hit on by guys? It's going to happen. I mean, you can't control it.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Or are you mad or slightly concerned that she will allow these men to pick her up, and because you're not self-confident enough, she's going to go off with them because they're perceived better? That's really what a lot of this is. I mean, if you can really pull that shame out and like, I don't deserve her, and you can really pull that out and then start analyzing just on that base level, like, I do deserve her. I've been awesome to her. She's been great to me. I trust her. Yes, go out with your girlfriends. Have fun. Call me if you need something. Your ass better be here by 2 a.m., whatever. But even when you get into those kinds of relationships and you find yourself triggered that way, so really ask yourself, am I being programmed because society says, oh, you can't let your girlfriend do this crap? Or there's something inside of you that you're feeling a certain way and you're trying to control the situation.
Yeah, yeah.
99% of the time, what it is.
It's going to be insecurities, like almost always. That's
Insecurities.
exactly what it comes down to. And the fact of the matter is if you can't trust your girl, why are you together? Like, why are you even in this situation? Why are you continuing to allow this, let this be?
Well, sure.
Remove
No,
yourself
no.
from the situation.
Yeah, that's just in one area, but
Yeah,
whatever worries you masters you. Whatever
exactly.
you're worried about becomes your master.
That's the point, is stop worrying about it. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're worrying about it all the time.
Yeah,
Like I said, I mean, just face it head on. Why am I worried about this? What am I insecure about? And then, like, at the same time, like, you know, I put on some weight, or I'm not making the amount of money that I wish I could. We're not doing as many things as we used to. I'm not trying as hard as I used to. When you start to look at it inwardly on the things that you do control, and you start to correct those things, everything gets better outward. Like, your relationship with her will get better, and you will
sure.
be able to trust her when she goes out to the club with her girlfriends. It doesn't matter, because she'll want to come home to you. She's not going to want to go anywhere else. She's not going to want to mess around, because nobody else compares to you. And
Yeah.
so you have to believe that first, though. And if you don't believe that, you need to reflect and ask yourself, well, why don't I believe that? What do I believe is wrong with me? Am I not working out enough? Am I not trying hard enough? Am I not doing enough to make enough money? Am I not, working in my business enough? What exactly is it that I feel inadequate about? And then
Right.
you just tackle that thing, because that's what you do control.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. You can control you. You can, again, figure out what the trigger is and really understand it. And then you're free from it. Then it won't happen again, you know? And, kind of to end with this, it's a lot of it's like your feelings and stuff. We talk about this, and this is a men's channel, and I always kind of tell my guys that I'm coaching, especially guys that are very more in their feminine. They're more in their. They feel like they have to vomit out their fucking emotions. I was kind of tell them like, listen, I can't sell my emotions, so I don't market them. And it's a good way to look at it. It's like, if I can't make money off vomiting out my shit, why would I'm not going to market them then, And so guys, when they really understand that, like, oh shit, that's right. But
Yeah.
having these triggers, having these thoughts, they're all normal. But what's not normal is allowing the cycle to keep repeating because you're not learning from it. That becomes a dysfunction. We can help you out. This is what this channel is about. I do offer, personalized coaching. We're going to get into group coaching here soon, and we can definitely help you out. End of August 31st is the last day we're doing free discovery calls. After that, they are going to be paid. They're going to be very minimal amount, but if you want to get on a free discovery call, kind of talk about this or anything else that you feel stuck in life, book a call with me. If it's more business in nature that you want some help on, especially business surrounding technologies, Chase is the guy for that, or Kim. But we're definitely here to help. But August 31st is it. After that, they're all paid because we're just getting too busy. We got a lot going on. We're trying to give you guys a lot of value in some of the programs that we're doing. It does take up a lot of our times to produce the content to give away. So again, August 31st, that's the end of it. After that, if you want to book a call with us, it's going to be, you got to pay. So
Absolutely. Make sure you guys get it while they're there. And it's super valuable. I love being on these calls with you guys. I love actually taking these calls and learning more about you guys and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. It really helps me put a lot of content into this channel too. And so please, maybe make sure you take advantage of that before they actually go up on the price. But in addition to that, like I said, guys, like, just want to leave you with this, that like things don't just change on their own.
no.
Like, nothing just changes on their own. Like, you can't just wait for things to change. You can't just wait for things to get better, because it won't.
No.
It'll keep repeating again and again and again. You will stay in the same situation for years on end if you don't take action and be proactive and make these changes.
Yeah.
And so if there's something that you're struggling with, if there's something you know needs to change that you really want some help with, you want some direction, you want some guidance, that's exactly what we're here for. We have plenty of resources that we can send you guys. Hop on that call with us. Let me know what you're struggling with. I probably have a resource that will help you out that I'm more than willing to give you guys for free. So please take advantage of this. Make the changes you know you need to make. Appreciate you guys. Yeah, definitely. Great topic. Starting to love how these lives are starting to go better and better and better, like I said. So yeah. I think that we're having better topics. If there's a topic that you guys want us to cover, there's something you want to engage with us on, get in here and chat, have a conversation with us. That's what we encourage. Please let us know. We will be back here next Friday with you guys. You guys have an amazing weekend. Thanks as always.